for each person to stop talking.
I was simply trying to answer the question in the way that you framed it. I would suggest that that the proper incurrence of legal expenses are a cost of providing service, which should be recoverable from ratepayers.
And what I'm trying to work on with you is whether it's a proper use of company resources to pay legal expenses in an effort to avoid personal liability for directors.
Objection, Your Honor. Number one, this question has been asked and answered. Mr. Rabon answered several times that he doesn't know. He can't answer this question. And also, he is a rate consultant. He's not here to testify as to the reasonableness of board actions from prior litigation.
Sustained as to asked and answered. And Ms. Allen, I understand that you're trying to get to a particular point. I believe there are some limitations as to the scope of Mr. Rabon's expertise. I will allow some room here. Keep that in mind.
Mr. Rabon, here's what I'm trying to work on. And I'm not a rate lawyer, so I'm sorry to be inept about this. What I'm trying to work on is you seem to be expressing the opinion that these are properly incurred legal expenses. Have I got that right?
They appear to me to be properly incurred legal expenses.
What factors or circumstances about them appear to you to make these properly incurred legal expenses?
Legal expenses were represented to me as being those associated with defense and various litigations incurred by the utility, and therefore, in the course of doing its business, and were incurred prudently for and should be recovered from ratepayers.
Okay, so I take it that nobody told you, for example, that these litigation costs were used in an effort to prevent the company from recovering its property. Nobody told you that.
No one has characterized anything in that fashion to me.
And no one has told you that company resources, in this case, were used in an effort to prevent personal liability on the part of current and former directors. Nobody's told you that.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. All of these questions, this line of questioning calls for hearsay. Nobody's told you that.
I'll overrule the objection. She's allowed to probe the extent of his review, but Ms. Ellen, it may be more efficient if you simply ask him the extent of his review and how in depth he made his determination that they were prudently incurred.
His question, what he just said. Can you answer that one?
You're asking the judge's question, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I do not recall doing any special investigations into the legal expenses that were incorporated into the revenue requirement.
So you kind of just treated this as ordinary, run-of-the-mill litigation in which the company needed to preserve its property by defending, right?
I didn't presume that it was about preserving property. Some of that question was not part of my presumption.
Ms. Allen, I'd like to move on because I think he's answered the question.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I just want, if you'll just tell me the reasons why you think this board was prudent, I will move on. If you think that.
I have not been presented.
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered.
Overruled.
I've been presented with no information that would lead me to believe that this was imprudent.
Okay, I really don't want to belabor the point, but you apparently have something in mind, a criteria or a definition about prudent. And I'm just trying to figure out how you applied that and determined that this board acted prudently, if you did.
Mr. Rabon, do you have a response?
I'm sorry, I didn't. Could you repeat the question?
I'm getting the impression that you have some criteria or definition that you use to determine whether expenses are prudent, that you applied that and made a determination here, and I just want you to help me to understand what is it about this board action that made you say, oh, this is prudent.
I made no special investigations into these legal expenses that led me to that conclusion.
Fair enough. Mr. Rabon, I'm going to ask you some rate-making questions, which I'll probably not do a good job of, but help me, okay? My understanding is that the company here had a rate analysis done by an outfit called TRWA. Did you know about that?
I was told that.
Did you make any review of that analysis?
No, I was not involved in that at all.
I'm sorry, I really didn't expect you to tell me that you were involved in it. I wondered if, in your work in this case, if you'd taken a look at it.
No, it has not been part of my review.
Can you tell us whether a rate design that is structured to capture revenues or the purpose of paying forward legal fees is an acceptable design practice?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you help me with the paying forward legal fees part of that?
Let me explain to you what I understand occurred here, and then we'll go from there. What I think we've been told in this proceeding is that this rate design was intended to generate revenues so that the company could pay two law firms around $20,000 a month going forward against the legal bills that were accruing. And that this rate is intended to be in effect until such time as all of the legal fees that have arisen from the lawsuits involving the 2016 land transaction have been concluded and the bills have been paid. Do you understand?
I believe so.
Is that an acceptable rate practice, rate design practice?
I would not characterize that as a rate design practice.
What would you characterize that as?
What you described sounds to me like the utility making arrangements to be able to pay its legal expenses over a period of time. I'm not clear on how you're connecting that back to rate design.
Okay. So what's happening is that the company is continuing to authorize lawyers to do work, and those lawyers are continuing to do work, and they are charging for their services on an ongoing basis, and that's been going on pretty much since 2018, and it continues today. And they send invoices periodically, typically monthly, in the amounts that are whatever correspond to the work they've done. And those amounts accumulate a balance, and the company pays $10,000 to one law firm and $10,000 to the other law firm every month, and the balance.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this, excuse me, I'm going to object at this time to number one, narrative, and number two, I don't hear a question in between the narrative.
Ms. Allen, can you break it down?
I can try. Here's the first part. The company has engaged lawyers in 2018, and it told them to go forth and do legal work, and there were no constraints placed on the amount of fees they could charge, and they did their legal work and they billed for it at their usual rates, and they presented invoices on a monthly basis. The company found out when it received the invoice how much the legal fees were, and that has continued and continues today, if I understand it, so that the legal fees that the company has become obligated to pay continue to grow over time as invoices are generated and received. And $10,000 each month is paid to one law firm and another law firm.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Against that.
I think we're back where we were, Ms. Allen. What's your question for this witness?
What's your understanding of how they design these rates? How about that?
My understanding is that they designed these rates with assistance from Texas Rural Water Association to recover their identified revenue requirements.
What I really meant to ask you is, do you have an opinion about the methodology that was used to design these rates?
No.
My understanding is that the rate change in March of 2020 did not involve a change of the rates associated with gallonage use. Does that make sense? They
I
changed-
believe, I believe I understand what you're saying.
They changed the base rate. They did not change the tiered rate for water usage. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding.
There was no analysis. Do you know whether or not there was an analysis in connection with the rate design of the actual variable expenses?
No,
You don't know, or
correct. To be clear, I do not know.
did you see any indication in the information that was provided to you that there was any analysis of the variable costs that were in that rate study?
Based on an exhibit that I saw, I could see that there was some division of the revenue requirement between fixed and variable. But that's the extent to which I'm aware.
So I take it that you didn't see any indication that anybody had actually studied the allocation between fixed and variable. Is that fair to say?
I do not know.
Okay. Did you see, never mind. Your Honor, I'm going to turn it over to the experts and pass this witness for the moment.
Okay, Ms. Lander, how much cross do you have for this witness?
I have about 15 questions, or give or take.
Go ahead.
Great. Good morning, or good afternoon, Mr. Rabon. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Great. Okay, so I have just a few questions. I want to start with some basic rate design stuff. Can you confirm for me that the revenue requirement for the rates that are in question right now, that revenue requirement is approximately $576,000?
That sounds ballpark accurate, but I don't think I have that in my testimony anywhere to be able to confirm it.
That's okay. We're gonna get to the rates in your testimony. I just wanted to have like a starting point for some math. So the rates are designed to include approximately $171,000 in legal expenses, correct?
I don't think that's in my testimony, but I will take your word for it that that's accurate.
Thank you. So that's $170,000 that has been it's designed to be recovered through the base rates, correct?
Well, if your number is accurate, I don't know if any of that amount was intended to be recovered through volumetric charges. I'm not aware of that being the case, but I just do not, I'm not positive.
Okay. If the commission finds that it's appropriate to approve the current rates as just and reasonable, that means that the WSC will recover the amount in the base rates every year indefinitely, right?
There would be presumably some variation due to customer growth and other factors, but ballpark, that sounds reasonably accurate.
Okay, so unless the board changes its rates and accounting for some variation in the number of customers, these rates are designed to recover $170,000 to be allocated toward legal expenses and they would recover that amount every year until they decided, if they decide to change their rates.
Assuming that your amount is correct, yes.
Okay, great. So if we could turn to page 6 of your rebuttal testimony, which is Windermere Exhibit 9. There's a chart, I believe, that shows the base rates, which are $90.39 for water and $66.41 for sewer, correct?
I see that, yes.
Great. And there are 271 water customers and 245 sewer customers, correct?
That's what's represented here, and I have no reason to believe that's inaccurate.
Good, okay. So we're gonna do some multiplication now. I'm sorry for it. So, will you accept my representation that if you add the result of $90.39 multiplied by 271, which would be the amount that is taken in for base rates for water, and then 6641 times 245, which would give us the amount taken in as the base rate for sewer, that would be $489,000 and $489,193.
Is that an annual amount that you're representing to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I'm not checking your math, but
I'm happy to pull up a calculator on the screen, but I feel like no one really wants that.
no, that's fine. As long as the question is not to confirm your math, okay,
No,
we're good.
we're just ballparking percentages. So, if the base rates recover $489,193, and the revenue requirement is $576,192, will you accept my representation that Windermere recovers approximately 84.9% of its revenue requirement through base rates?
Again, without doing the math,
So
I have no reason to dispute your math. How about that?
sure. So basically what I'm doing is I'm dividing 489 by 576, and it brings me to about 85%.
Okay.
If we get 84.9% from the base rates, we should get about 15.1% of the revenue requirement from volumetric rates, correct?
That seems reasonable.
Okay, well, I don't know if do you think an 85-15 split between base rates and volumetric is reasonable?
Well, let me be clear about my answer. Your math seems reasonable.
How does
Is that a
that?
better?
Sorry, go ahead.
My answer to it being reasonable was an indication that your math seemed reasonable. I apologize.
No problem. I'm just curious, how do you feel about the 85-15 split in terms of base rates and volumetric?
Sure. So there can be many reasons why a utility might prioritize revenue stability through higher fixed charges as compared to variable charges. So, you know, there are competing priorities. Any decision, any rate design is a balance of competing priorities. I was not involved at all in their rate design, but I'm presuming from the structure that they intended to prioritize revenue stability, but in recognition of the fact that they were recovering a significant portion of their revenue requirement through their fixed charges, they have implemented or have in place an inclining volumetric rate structure to help incentivize water conservation or dissuade customers from wasting water.
Okay, I'm sorry, I guess I should be more clear. Does it seem standard to you to have an 85-15 split?
I can't point to another utility that I can think of today that has that particular division.
Okay. All right, so that was an aside. I want to go back to the 85.1 and the 84.9 and the 15.1. So if we're recovering 15.1 of the revenue requirement, will you accept my representation that 15.1% of $576,192 is approximately $87,000?
So did 15, that didn't sound right. State it again, just to make sure I followed you. So you did 15% of $500,000, is that what you were doing?
All right. 15%, 15.1%,
Okay,
the revenue requirement,
yeah. And remind me what that number was that you were representing?
576,
Okay.
192.
In that case, then your original number does order of magnitude sound accurate to me.
Great, okay. So if my math is right, we should be collecting, or Windermere should be collecting about $489,193 in its base rates and approximately $87,000 through its volumetric rates. Correct?
That's what that would indicate from your description, yes.
Okay, good. Could you please turn to, or do you have a copy of Windermere's Exhibit 8, which is Mike Nelson's rebuttal testimony?
I only have my testimony in front of me.
Okay, let me pull it up for you. Please.